Hey guys, Kev here, and I want to do a video talking about skiff bearings and why I use them, what the benefits are there reasons not to use them, are there situations you don't want to use them, you know, all of the kind of basics around skiff bearings. And I thought I did this video before, and I may have, and I just couldn't find it, but I think it's been long enough now that there's, you know, new people to the channel. I get questions all the time about skiff bearings, why I install them and everything, the reasoning, all of that stuff. So I wanted to kind of touch base on that. I also wanted to give a big shout out to Steve Skiff and Skiff Made Blades, Skiff Workshop, and Skiff Bearings in general. They've been a crucial part of the channel for a long time now, because I literally swap 90% of my knives over to their bearings. And if you go back about 6 months or so, they started sort of semi-sponsoring the channel. They don't pay me or anything, but they do send me bearings when I need them. I just ask and they'll send me some, and they send me giveaway stuff. So I give away a lot of skiff stuff to you guys because of that. And it's sort of just a mutually beneficial thing, right? Because I'm gonna install their bearings, they get some advertising, I get bearings, don't have to pay for them, which is nice. But there's no like written agreement that I'm gonna say they're better than other things or whatever. I just kind of feel that way already. So but if you guys watch my channel long enough, you'll know that I go through you know, evolutions, and I learn and I grow and all of that. I've tried all different types of bearings. I started with Gillian bearings mostly, and then I would use skiffs, and I would also use taco bearings. And over time, just having installed so many sets, I mean, it's hundreds at this point, I just kind of learned my preference. Skiff bearings are my preference. To me, it has a lot to do with the precision and the consistency. That's the biggest thing for me. Obviously, if the product wasn't fantastic, it doesn't matter how consistent they are, but they are so consistent. I have literally never had a set of skiff bearings seize up on me or cause me issues at all. If that has happened, it's usually been the knife. Like, it just doesn't fit in the knife, and that's okay. That happens. And there are times where you just can't use skiffs, or you don't want to use skiffs, and I'll talk about those here. But for the most part, skiffs are just the best option, and I love their products, and it just makes it easy for me to work with them. They also have other items like the finger bit, which is this awesome little bit driver that you can hold in your fingers, and it works really well for something like a spinning pivot. So you can kind of place your finger bit in one side like this, and you're basically locking it down, and then you can easily work on it from this side. So the finger bit's fantastic. It's like 20 bucks, made in aluminum, wonderful product. And then they have the skiff card. I think it's called the test fit card. And essentially this helps you figure out what bearings you need. You can push your pivot barrel through here, and you'll figure out whether it's a 1/4 inch, 6 millimeter, 5 millimeter, etc. And then you can put the bearings in sideways like so, and you can test the width of the balls, and that'll tell you exactly which size skiffs you need. It won't tell you the overall diameter. That's the one thing missing on here, but you can pretty much gauge that yourself. But anyway, I have this little tin from Tinker Force. I might as well shout them out as well. They're a great company. They 3D print these trays, and they also make this tin. I guess they have the tin sourced, and then they put the insert in, which can be utilized different ways, but I use it for my skiff bearings. But their stuff is super affordable and ultra useful. I mean, I love all of their stuff. I have some of their sort of holders that holds all of my maintenance stuff. It's just an excellent setup, and it's super affordable. You know, this tray is like 30 bucks or something. This tin, I'm guessing, is like 15 bucks, you know? So, all right, anyway, what is a skiff bearing? Let's start with that. So there's all different sizes, and we're gonna talk about regular bearings because I have some here. But this is essentially what skiff bearings are right here. These little guys, they are bearings for your knife. So if you're not familiar with how knives work, they have bearings or washers depending on the knife. So I'm a big proponent of knives on bearings. So you won't see a lot of washer knives on the channel. They do come around. I do have a couple that I love, but for the most part, everything I get is on bearings, and you'll see they ride between the scale and the blade, and they're what basically makes the action super smooth, because the blade is kind of riding on these balls. So I don't want to give you a whole tutorial on what bearings are, but that's a breakdown, simplification. And then Skiff makes replacement ones. So basically most of your knives are going to come with bearings like this. These are stock bearings. These are going to be 5 millimeter 1/16 bearings. I would venture to guess that, man, almost 75% of knives on the market right now use these bearings. Bearing knives, I should say. 75% of bearing knives use these. Mostly found in Chinese-made knives, also Italian-made knives. I believe Taiwan. Other, you know, I'm sure there's others as well. But it is a millimeter measurement, so it's metric. If you have a US made knife, you're usually going to get a 3/16 pivot or a 1/4 inch pivot, where in China, for the most part, it's 5 millimeter and 6 millimeter. And again, the most common is 5 millimeter 1/16. And it goes all the way down to a 1/8 pivot. They get really small in some cases. But this is what your standard bearing looks like. And the reason why I replace most of my knives with skiff bearings is twofold. One, I am absolutely bananas, like OCD about knives, okay? I want the best action I can get. I want the best feel, the smoothest feel I can get. So you're really not getting like a total game-changing feeling when you swap your bearings. Now, there are scenarios where the stock bearings are just shit, or you know, they're just not good. The spacing is bad. Like, what you'll notice is there's more balls here. So you have more surface area being contacted on the blade, right? There's 11 balls here versus like 8 or whatever here. And sometimes that ratio is really bad. The best example of that I would have is the 5 millimeter 3/64 ball bearings that you see on a lot of knives lately. They tend to have very poor ball to surface area ratio or whatever. And the Skiff 5 millimeter 3/64 have a ton of balls per area or whatever. I don't know the best way to put that. So it really makes a big difference in knives with that size bearing. But anyway, the biggest reason I like skiff bearings over this is a brass cage and then ceramic balls. Ceramic balls are good. That's what's in here. So that's not any different. But you will see a lot of times in Italian knives, American knives, you'll see them use steel balls. And that, to me, is a huge upgrade when you switch to ceramic. Just the feel of it. It just is smoother. It breaks in quicker. It's just better, in my opinion. Now, I'm not the foremost expert on bearings or anything, so you have to make your own assumptions, do your own research. A lot of people will disagree with what I say. A lot of people will agree, but, you know, this is my take, so just keep that in mind. It's an opinion. But steel balls suck ass, and nobody should be using them. It's absolute trash when people use them, and the fact that I see them in custom knives sometimes is annoying. You spend $800, $900, $1,000 on a knife and you get steel bearings. That's just, I don't know. That's just like, you can spend the 20 cents or whatever it costs for these brass cage ceramic ones. But, you know, we could argue about that till we're blue in the face. Some people just don't think it matters, but I think it does. So anyway, ceramic's better. But the thing that's better about skiffs than these is this is a stamped bearing. So what you'll see is, and sorry, this is going to definitely be a rant and ramble video, ranting and raving over here. It's stamped. So essentially it's in a sheet of brass and it's just punched out, I guess is the best way to look at that. So you have this ass end. That's what I call it, the ass end of the bearing cage. So you see that lip has this lip and a pocket in there, and then this side's nice, right? This side's flat and smooth. But this bearing has to go in the knife like this. So one side is going to get the nice, flat, smooth side, and one side is going to get this ass stamped side. Now, you will have people who will argue, that doesn't matter, Kev, because the ball is all that's contacting the knife, right? Like, it's putting pressure this way. The pivot tightens down, puts pressure on it, and the ball is really the thickness that matters. This cage is not thicker than the ball, so it doesn't matter. It's all going to just be pressed against the ball, and that cage really does not matter. Now, there's two things I will say to counter that argument. One, the biggest argument for it is gunk. So you cannot tell me that this right here will not build up more gunk in that open ass end versus this, which is a solid phosphor bronze cage, okay? There's no ass end on this. This is a machined, a milled piece of phosphor bronze. It's not stamped, right? Now, that takes longer. That costs more. These obviously have a cost. They're like $12, $13 for a set. So, you know, for some people, that's immediately going to be screw that. I can get a knife for $50. Like, you know, I get it. It's just a thing. Some of us care, and some of us put the money into it. I spent thousands on bearings before I ever got some for free. So if you want to, you know, play that game, you can, but whatever. The full cage is, to me, the biggest thing. You don't have that ass end that can fill up with gunk and shit, right? And you'll notice, if you take apart your knife that has these, 99% of the time from Chinese OEMs, you'll have a bunch of lube and shit all like built up in there, caked around the balls. So that's number one. Number two for me is you just feel it. I can't explain it. The cage shouldn't matter. It should not matter because the ball is the thickness that counts, but you can just feel it. You know, most people I think who've used skiffs or aftermarket bearings would agree with me. You can just feel the difference. And it just is what it is. You know, people will say steel bearings, ceramic doesn't matter, open cage, whatever, doesn't matter. Well, to me it does because I literally feel a difference instantly. Soon as I put that knife back together with skiffs, I'm like, oh shit, this feels so much better. And you know, sometimes it's more than others, but you know, almost every time I'm like, oh yeah, you know, unless they just don't fit, right? So that's what a regular bearing basically looks like from factory. And then this is what skiff bearings look like. Do I have the right? Yes. This is what skiff bearings look like. So let me get these out of the way. I tend to keep the stock ones, and I'll just put them in a bag or something, and eventually somebody will want them who works on knives or whatever. Okay, so that's a quick what they look like, why, you know, the differences, that kind of thing. Now, my biggest takeaway, my biggest factor for putting skiffs in, there's two of them. One is smoothness. There's just a difference. I can just feel a difference. As soon as I put skiffs in, it just feels smoother. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there's more balls, right? So most of the time, I mean, pretty much 100% of the time, when you put skiffs in, you have now more ceramic balls in there contacting the blade. So as that blade is riding on those bearings, right, it's making contact with more ceramic balls and less just space, right? Because if you have space and you have a tightened down pivot, right, you can start getting like a clamping effect between the balls. The balls will indent more because there's more pressure on each ball. But if you have more balls, it spreads that pressure out, which in turn makes it smoother and feel less pressure in there, I think. That's my take on it. So it's just an instant like smoothness factor. Now, some people have a false, I will say it, a false assumption that skiff bearings equals more drop shut, right? I really don't think that skiff bearings make your knife more drop shut. I think if anything, when it comes to that factor, it's because you cleaned the knife, you lubricated it properly, you helped break in the detent a little bit by putting oil on the detent ball. Always recommend that, by the way. Put a little bit of KPL heavy on your detent ball. But I think that's mostly what the more drop shut is about. And then you're also tuning it. When you put it back together, you're tightening that pivot to exactly where you want it. And that's usually the cause of your more drop shut. Not the bearings, right? But it has that smoothness to it. So you could argue that it does make it slightly more drop shut or more like more better, makes the action better because it's smoother, so it can glide a little quicker or faster, so it does feel a little bit better. You know, I've always said that skiffs maybe make the action like 5 to 10% better. It's not some kind of like huge number or anything that really makes a difference. To me, it's about the smoothness. So, you know, I'm not feeling a bunch of grit here. It just feels very smooth and glassy, as they say in the CRK community. So that's number one. And then number two for me is lateral strength. So a couple things. These all have skiffs, by the way, that I'm showing you currently. That first one was the Tuya Knives Mutt, designed by Dave Warren and Colin Mason Pierre. Should be available right now at Tuya Knives or TuyaKnifeUS.com. Very, very cool knife. S90B, Chinese fat carbon. Very cool stuff. Love it. But it has skiffs in it. Now, when I first got the F5.5, this is the Urban EDC F5.5. I've had like 20 of these. When I first got it, I noticed it had a little bit of side-to-side play in between open and closed. Not when it's closed, nothing. Not when it's open, no side-to-side, nothing. It's not blade play, lock rock, or any of that. It's not a big deal. But it would have a little bit of side-to-side kind of wiggle, even when tight. I went ahead and put skiffs in, boom, that disappeared. Action just as buttery as before. Maybe a little smoother, not any more drop shut, just a little smoother, and none of that side-to-side feeling. Why is that? Because these are solid cages, right? And in my opinion, when you tighten down on a solid cage versus one with an ass end on it, a stamped one, you just get more stability. So skiff bearings will, in turn, let you tighten your pivot down and have a more solid feel, but not over tighten it. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you can get it to where there's no blade play at all and you're still getting really good droppy action, right? Most of the time. It's not every knife. You gotta remember this is all situational, but that's my experience by and large, that I can get a knife to be drop shut, smooth as butter, dead centered, right? And have no side-to-side play. And that's usually because skiffs allow me to tighten it a little bit more, in a sense, without tightening the action up. Where with the stock bearings, I have to go a little too tight where the action binds up, to get rid of the play, right? Or I have to get it loose to where I get this beautiful action, but now I have a little bit of side-to-side play. So it just allows you, I think, to tune your knife better. That'd be the best way to put it. And again, this is for the nerds out there, the ADD action nerds, the fidget nerds, the tinker nerds. This is not something you have to do to your knives, right? That's the important thing I want to note. Nobody is saying you have to put skiff bearings in your knife. There's some knives that I think really should have them, but I'm not going to sit there and tell you have to do that, right? But side to side or lateral strength, it gives you more lateral strength, in my opinion, is the biggest reason for skiff bearings, reason I put them in. Here's another knife I put skiffs in. This is the what is this? The iMamba from Arnaud Bernard Brothers. Has this mirror finish that I really don't like. I wish it had a normal belt satin. And now I'm not remembering. This might have had skiff bearings in it. I think they actually came with skiff bearings, which is awesome. So very nice, very smooth, very glassy feel. And, you know, a lot of that super smooth, glassy feel comes from the fact that they have a really nice finish on the blade, polished up around where the bearings go and where the detemp track is. Because a lot of times people think a gritty feeling knife is the bearings. It's really your detent ball, your detent track wearing in or needing to wear in or needing oil. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say bearings are the sole reason a knife is smooth. That's not true. But, you know, it definitely aids in that. But fantastic knife, has skiffs. One of my own knives from Divo Knives has skiff bearings. We make sure all of our knives can take skiff bearings. For the most part, I think they all have 5mm 1/16 bearings. So we always try to do that because, you know, try to live by the code, you know what I mean? Another question I get a lot is, why don't companies just send the knife with skiffs in it? You love skiffs so much, Kev. Why don't all your knives come with them? Well, the biggest reason for that is twofold. It's cost, and then it's just logistics. You know, we don't want to have to charge an extra. We don't want to have to charge an extra $20 a knife retail to put skiffs in it, because the fact is that, you know, 90% of you guys don't care. You know, a lot of you don't care about putting skiffs in, or say you can't feel a difference, or it's not worth it, or whatever. So we're going to charge you more to do it, and then most of you aren't going to care at all. So it's like they'd rather have it for the $20 less. You know what I mean? That's the way we look at it. And the people, the 10% that do want skiffs, well, they can just get the skiffs and install it. And they're probably going to be the guys who take apart their knife and tweak it and do things anyway, right? Yeah, we try to make sure they're all able to take skiffs. The other reason is logistics. We'd have to order them from Skiff. He'd have to make, you know, 500 sets or whatever, and then send them to China. And then we have to get China to do it, because a lot of times they don't want to do stuff like that. They want to use their stock bearings that they're used to using. Their machines are set up to use those, and, you know, so it'd just be a complicated matter. If we ever had a knife made here in the U.S., which we're working on, we would definitely try to have skiffs installed in that. But this is the Divo Knives Buzz. This is available, I believe, right now at Blade HQ and Knife Center have some. So check it out. Fantastic knife, in my opinion. I have the Vero Engineering Synapse Lefty. Now, here's the thing. 95% of my knives have skiffs in them. So if I own the knife, it probably has skiffs. If it takes bearings and the bearing size exists at Skiff, right? Some just don't exist. He doesn't have every size bearing, right? Not everything can be swapped out, but for the ones that can, I pretty much have them swapped out. This is the Lefty Synapse. Love it. Another factor as to why skiffs are awesome is a lot of times if you have a knife that's off center and you put skiffs in, it will center the knife up. You'll just get better centering because you're not squeezing on those stamped cages. You know, sometimes they put them in one way or the other way, and it can just be a little bit tricky, where skiffs, a lot of times you put them in, boom, knife is centered. Another one I have here is the Gunslinger Jack from Jack Wolf Knives. This leads me to another good reason to use skiffs. I was talking about that lateral strength and everything. This knife takes really tiny bearings. It's a 1/8 pivot, tiny pivot. And then you have, I think, 3/64 ball bearings. And putting skiffs in a knife this small can make a difference because you're getting extra balls in there. And that's a lot of times what happens on those smaller bearings is you don't get as many balls. So I definitely noticed an improvement. I can tighten this knife up to where, you know, before I skiffed it, I couldn't get it tight where there's absolutely no play. This thing is a tank side to side. And get it to drop to my nail like that. And now I can, because I get those extra balls in there that just give you that more surface area, so you can make it a little tighter and still have the same great action on it. Dead nut centered. And the last one here, I think, is the Bridgeport Knives 395 V2. This is an example of a knife where the action actually did not get better. I may have over tightened it when I put it back together, but you know, it drops and it shakes down. It's great action, don't get me wrong. But before I put the skiffs in, it actually was like almost a guillotine, right? But I prefer this feel. It's smooth, it's glassy. It just feels really good. So it doesn't always have to make it more drop shut. I just think that's a sort of misnomer with skiffs, that's all we're looking for when we skiff knives. At least in my case, that's not what I'm trying to do, is just make it a guillotine. You know, I've come to love a nice drop to the nail slow and then shake down. Doesn't tear me up as much, you know. Great knife, by the way. He has another knife up on pre-order, I think, or in production. Looks cool. So check out Bridgeport Knives. So here's some reasons not to use skiffs. So I will do that, and then we'll wrap this up. I know I'm just rambling, but hey, that's how I do. So number one reason, I don't have bearings that fit it. As far as I know, I do not have skiff bearings that will fit the Urban EDC Baby Barlow. I love this knife to death. It has little Teflon washers. I don't know if you can see in there, but they are, Teflon caged. I don't know if you're going to get a look at it. Teflon caged bearings. So they're ceramic bearings, but they're in a Teflon cage, which to me is kind of like the next best thing to skiffs, because those Teflon cages or nylon cages are not stamped. So it's a solid cage, right? But I just don't have anything that fits it. And the action on this is fantastic for such a tiny knife. I mean, look at that. It's just absolutely fantastic. But not fitting is a great reason to not skiff your knife, right? The Kunmu Knives Padre, I just did this disassembly video. I tried to put skiffs in here. I would say technically they did fit, and I've seen other people who have posted about this knife and they put skiffs in and they love it or whatever. I put skiffs in here and the action just didn't feel right. It really got tight. I think that the bearings were just a little wider somehow, like the thickness on the cage or something was just, or maybe the way it fit into the pocket was just a little too tight. So it just didn't want to free up the action like this. So I went back to the stock bearings, which are great. They're multi-row. Teflon caged, no stamp bearings, excellently made or purchased by Kunwu and installed in these knives. And the action on this is fantastic. I have zero play in any direction. I get a beautiful drop and a shake close. I tune the detent, but man, this thing is smooth and fun to fidget with. This thing grew on me like really fast. I love this thing. But it didn't need skiffs. Sometimes you got to just let it go and say, it doesn't need it. It's okay. It's okay, Kev. And then the last reason would be something like this Trevor Berger Urban Custom. So this is a custom by Trevor Berger. And he makes his own bearings. So, sometimes you got to just accept that somebody else does it better. You know what I mean? Skiffs are my favorite type of bearing. They probably always will be, but the bearings in this Trevor Berger are custom made by Trevor Berger. He does that for a reason. He perfectly fits them to the knives he makes. And I have tried putting skiffs in all of his knives, and they are okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It works, right? It's not bad or anything, but I always end up getting better action on his bearings. He makes a solid brass cage, and then I don't know how he does it, but he fits each ball in interestingly. It's not stamped or anything. They're extremely well-made bearings. There's no reason to switch them out, honestly, other than I just love skiffs and I try anyway, but I always end up going back to his stock bearings. And I have found in the past that skiffs I have to kind of set to where there's a tiny bit of play to get it to have this action, where on his bearings, the stock custom ones, I don't. I have no lateral play at all, and look at this action. It's just butter. This is one of the best knives on the planet, by the way. Just love this knife to death. And that's a great reason not to put skiffs in a knife. It already has great bearings or custom bearings. Think of Grimsmo knives. Think of Oz Machine Company, right? I'm trying to think of anybody else who does that. There's probably others who do that as well. Trevor Berger obviously does it. So you don't need to swap out custom bearings. That just seems kind of silly, right? So there you go. That's a breakdown on why I love and use skiff bearings. A breakdown on when not to use them or when I don't use them. And I think an objective look at what they do, why, and if it's worth it, right? And for me, as a nut, right, it is worth it for me. I also enjoy taking knives apart. I love just fiddling with the knives. I also love recording that and showing it to you guys. That's part of it, right? Not everybody has that aspect to it. So, make your decisions based on your own life and situation and everything. But hey, if you want to get into skiff bearings and installing them on everything, I cannot recommend them anymore. I will link it down below. I have a discount, LeftyEDC. That code will save you 10% off anything from the Skiff Workshop, I believe. Well, at least the bearings, the test card, the finger bit, that kind of stuff. It won't save you on their knives because Skiff Made Blades also is a company that it's a father and son team. And I believe it's Steve Skiff Sr. and Jr. And Jr. is the one that I talk to and work with. And he's the one who makes the bearings. And then he kind of like machines the rough parts for the knives. And then his dad, Sr., finishes them. He hand finishes the knives. It's really cool. Definitely check out their knives as well. I've been waiting to check out their new Fugitive model. When they have one available, they're going to let me check one out. But cannot recommend Skiff bearings anymore. If you guys want to just take a quick look at some, I'll show you the different sizes I have. So we had the 5mm 1/16 11 ball. That's the most popular by far. This is a 6mm 1/16, fairly popular on Chinese made knives. It's another one of those, but these actually have a multi-row. So it's technically the same size, 6mm 1/16, but you'll see this says 13 ball, this says 18. So you're not going to fit these in the same knife, right? Well, technically, if these fit, these would fit, but you wouldn't want these in a knife that fit these really, because you're giving up all those extra balls. But sometimes you'll have the pivot be the same, the thickness be the same, but the actual pocket for the bearings might be smaller or larger. That's where you got to make a little bit of your own judgment call. It's pretty easy to tell based on the bearings that you take out of it. But anyway, if you have questions, you can hit up Skiff. They have a compatibility sheet on their website, so you can actually search the knife you have and see what size bearing. I've sent them every knife I've installed them in. I send them and they update it, and then other people have obviously updated that list as well. But anyway, there's some of those. These are the same. There's also a slightly smaller one, 16 ball multi-row. They fit knives like the Jaeger M and stuff like that. These are some stock ones again. We have 3/16 1/16. So these are basically the American equivalent of the most common ones, and these are pretty common, and you'll see them in Chinese knives sometimes when it's a US maker, custom maker who has the knife made in China. 5mm 1/16, 6mm, here's another big one, multi-row that fits like the Evo and stuff. 5mm 1/16, 6mm 1/16. These are the most common that we're seeing here. 5mm 1/16 again, 5mm 1/16. I always have a bunch of these because, again, they're the most common. Here, this is the 5mm 3/64, so it's a little bit of a smaller ball. And these have become very common. So these are a good one to have on hand. I'll tell you in a second what I think you should have on hand if you're going to kit out. 1/8 3/64. Tiny ass bearing. So these are the ones that go in the gunslinger. So these little guys are in here. Pretty cool, right? We have 5mm 1/16 again. And I have another box with some of these. I didn't bring them all out, but 3/64 and 1/4 inch. So this is actually a US size, 1/4 inch 1/16. And again, some of these are actually interchangeable. There is such a slight difference between 1/4 inch and 6mm that if you have a 1/4 inch pivot, you can use, or the other way around, if you have a 6mm pivot, Chinese made knife with 6mm, you can use 1/4 inch bearings pretty well and not have like an issue with your action or anything, which is pretty cool. So if you're starting out, I would suggest the most important one to have is 5mm 1/16 11 ball. Just get like 3 or 4 of these to start with. You know, if you're just trying to buy a couple, then fine, buy one, but definitely get this size. Trust me, if you're into knives, if you're into any overseas made knives, even Italian, they're gonna have these a lot. Then I would recommend 6mm 1/16 as well. If you're into big knives, then I would get the big boys, the 6mm 1/16 18 ball. These fit like the CKF Evo 2 and stuff like that. And then if you're into USA made knives, I would 100% pick up 3/16 1/16. These fit like the Protect Malibu and Mordax. And then I would also get the 1/4 inch 1/16. And these will fit at least earlier versions. I don't know if they still do, but the Oz Roosevelt, and I think even the Koenig area, stuff like that. So there's a quick rundown. And I would also, if you're into Chinese knives, get a set, at least a set of these 5mm 3/64, because they're becoming more popular. And then there's even smaller ones. There's 1mm balls, and those are in like the Demco 80 20.5. And again, you can check the Skiff Made Blades website and go to the compatibility sheet to really get a good rundown of what your knives have, so you don't have to guess, right? That's the nice thing. You don't want to be guessing. You can always check their compatibility sheet. You can check my videos. If I have a video disassembling it, I usually hold up the bag at some point showing you the size, or I say it, or I list it in the description. I try to do that, but I forget a lot. So it's usually me saying it or showing it in the video. Unfortunately, you have to watch the video, sorry. And you can always ask me too. Feel free to ask me. But there you go, guys. I hope that helps anybody who has been new to the channel and is just curious why the hell I care so much about Skiff Bearings, why I do it. It's because I just love how they feel. I mean, they're in so many of my knives. It's incredible, really. And I've come to love Skiff, and they've been great to me as well. You know, I don't have like some deal with them where I have to promote their stuff. This is what you'll learn if you watch my channel. When I love something, I promote the shit out of it. And it has nothing to do with somebody paying me to do that. I will hunt them down and ask them for affiliate links. That's how I do it. If I really like something, I want to support it. And if I can go get a link or something that'll help the channel, of course I'm going to do that, because I'm already promoting it for free. Why wouldn't I do that and try to make a few bucks? But I don't ever promote things I don't believe in. I've never been able to do that in my life professionally, with, you know, sales, shit like that. Just, if I don't believe in it, it's not worth talking about to me. I don't feel right promoting things like that. So, you know, but anyway, Skiff Bearings, love them. Hope you love them. If you have any questions, hit me in the comments. Would really appreciate it. Subscribe, hit the like button, do all that cool shit. And I love you guys. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, and I will catch you later.